like how do you work with different audiences? And the thing is that we didn't want since the beginning to include people in the museum. We wanted to include the museum in people. So how can the museum be really like significant to people so people would come? So, and then I'm gonna show you a bit of our works through some videos and some talks. Let me see. Okay. The PowerPoint. Okay. So I start our talk to think a little bit like there's this, okay. Okay, there's this photographer. He's a blind photographer. His name is Eugene Balkar. He's from Slovenia and lives some. You know how to speak his name? Balkar. Balkar. Yes. So he's a blind photographer and a philosopher, and he said like he writes some articles about the Museum of Other Perceptions, and he said like why the Museum of Other Perceptions? Because museums established today, the museums that work, are made supposedly for normal people, people who realize things in a conventional way, generally speaking, without any effort. To this, the problem arises, how to conceive the Museum of Other Perceptions. So, this is a sentence that he says, okay, not me. He says, I am part of this group of people who are deprived of freedom. Okay, this is walking alone. Let me see if... Okay. For me, having a disability means to be deprived of liberty, of freedom. This is my best definition. We attribute the term person with disability to people who are in situation of deprivation of liberty. One of the greatest deprivation of liberty is the accessibility to the works of art and cultural wealth of the world. So the thing is, he considered like people with disability that are deprived from their freedom. And I ask if we, all of us, like the society, don't help them to be deprived of freedom. Because if we think about a place in equality of opportunities, they won't be deprived of freedom. So that's the question, and the second question is, would not be all of us in some instance deprived of liberty? So, well, there's just a second. So, I want to show you a video. To show you an example of what happened. So we started to receive the deaf audience in the museum. So a group of deaf school come to the museum with like knowing sign language, and the educator of the museum was having no idea of sign language, and the interpreter that come have no idea about contemporary art or modern art. So the thing is that the communication became so long and so hard. Meanwhile, the youngs and the kids were very interested in the art world and like wanted to communicate about this, but the communication was so long. And so this video is from 2002. It's already 15 years ago, but I'll show you to take a look how we started to work with the deafs.
A comunicação, ela precisa ser direta. Se tem muitas intermediações, ela fica truncada.
A linguagem para eles é visual, é visualidade.
Um corpo, ele dá um conceito.
É expressão corporal.
Um sinal que ele dá um conceito total, né? É diferente.
A língua de sinais seria espacial visual.
Eles falam outra língua, então a gente fala português e eles falam língua de sinais.
Nunca vai ser a minha forma de conversar frente a frente com esse surdo da mesma forma de surdo para surdo.
Na minha opinião, imediatamente eu pensei, a gente poderia fazer um trabalho com os adolescentes para que os adolescentes recebam outros surdos para que eles não tenham tantas intermediações.
Aqui em São Paulo, aí a primeira vez no Brasil.
É uma aposta que a gente fez nos jovens.
E daí a gente deu o nome desse curso de Aprender para Ensinar.
A gente ensina eles a perceberem que existem milhares de estratégias possíveis para trabalhar com o mesmo conteúdo.
A arte contemporânea pode usar fora, pode usar cidade, pode usar tudo.
Fazer com que esses alunos não sejam só formados como monitores de um museu, que eles venham a se aproximar da arte com essa experiência.
Arte contemporânea, arte contemporânea livre.
Para aumentar esse repertório de arte, a gente usou algumas estratégias diferentes.
Como que é o jeito mais legal de aprender sobre essa exposição?
Primeiro a gente propôs que eles fizessem uma entrevista com um artista.
A verdadeira liberdade para o artista passa até por cima do fato de ter que fazer arte.
E o que é arte?
A experiência que a gente está tendo aqui, ela é uma experiência que ela é muito mais intensa e verdadeira do que a experiência que vai estar naquela câmera.
Eles começaram a pensar, bom, nos tempos de hoje, o que tem?
Eles se relacionaram com a cidade.
Tem música eletrônica, tem vídeo.
Um dia a gente estava discutindo o que é intervenção urbana.
Tem computador.
Intervenção artística.
Tem fotografia.
Uma roupa diferente pode ser uma intervenção.
Então existe uma nova possibilidade para a arte. Essa ideia dessa performance das roupas subversivas é a proposta de uma ação artística. Eles perceberam que eles estavam ali como artistas. Eles pensaram no registro, eles foram até o fim.
É o conteúdo em si, que é a exposição de arte contemporânea. E o outro, são as estratégias.
Como que vocês vão receber o grupo?
Ou seja, como abordar essa exposição.
E eles, acho que sentiram, eu vou construir a minha monitoria, eu vou construir a minha educação para poder passar para um outro surdo.
E bancar isso e atender e fazer a coragem nascer maior que o medo, eu acho que é uma experiência extremamente integradora, que fortalece.
O mais importante é entender o que está acontecendo e eles se colocarem, eles estarem propondo questões que são deles.
você vê aquele ambiente tão ativado, né? Que estão acontecendo tantas coisas, mas silenciosas. Você sente o vigor da comunicação, da troca, e, no entanto, é um silêncio.
Eu não sei dizer nada por dizer, então eu escuto. Se você disser tudo que quiser, então eu escuto.
Hoje o museu fala com um orgulho imenso a língua deles.
A surdez, ela não é discriminada. A surdez agora, ela passa a ser valorizada.
Foi um desafio, sim, e foi um grande aprendizado.
Eles mostraram a capacidade que eles tinham de criar e de modificar esse mundo que era apresentado para eles.
Um turco tem capacidade.
Okay, so this what happens 15 years ago, and nowadays, well, wait a second. And nowadays, like, so these kids who started this course with us, they are nowadays working in different museums and different cultural institutions. So what seems to be just an experience, they were about to receive their friends, their younger friends from the schools, are now a thing that seems obvious today. It's their right to be received in their own language in the museums. And today we completely changed the reality of access for the deaf audience. But the thing is not only that the deaf audience can go to the museums. The thing is that us as a museum, we had this access from for the deaf culture and the deaf community. So this is how we think, like the transversal accessibility, with the mission of take modern and contemporary Brazilian art accessible to the largest possible number of people. The MAM consider it essential that all people who wish to get in touch with art, regardless of their physical, social, or psychological condition, really sense and feel that this is the universe belongs to them. Okay, so the museums, public or not public, they are public spaces and they belong to everyone. So people who work in museum should think about this, should think about like, how do I develop all my programs for the audience in a way that the audience can know that this space belongs to them. So MAM takes care that the museum is an area without barriers, whether physical, sensory, or intellectual. So, To ensure our students and our visitors with physical disabilities may have free access to the museum, we have learned. So now I'm going to talk about what we learn as a museum with the diversity of audiences. So we learn how the space and the way things are arranged can enable them to come and go and to do what they please. The architecture of the museum now follows the principle of the universal design and seeks to enable all people to use the space and its equipment comfortably, safely, and independently. So people with wheelchairs start like visiting the museum, that's all accessible inside, and then we have the sculpture garden, so we made it all accessible also in the place in the park that wasn't a place of the museum, it's a place from the city hall, but we made this way for them to be accessible. And all the activities as accessible, so for instance, jams of dance and to use the body, the people with wheelchair will dance as well, why not? And not only being like visitors, and also being like people with disability, and the diversity of people should be also the artists that are in our programmation, our agenda. Like, so this is Marcos Abranches, that's a dancer. He have this brain damage, and with this his partner that use wheelchairs, they were presenting a performing dance. Okay. So the deaf audience that we mentioned in this video, we learned for the deaf community how the body speaks. We discovered the power of a non-oral language. We understood that the inability to hear creates communities with their own language and culture, and we were able to work with them to produce artistic projects. The Brazilian Sign Language, that's Libras, has now been integrated into all MAM programs in its powerful and expressive visual dimension in courses, workshops, evening events, seminars, flash mobs, films, manifestos, storytelling, and literature and musical events. So I mentioned yesterday in the other lecture that we were, like that today, for instance, we're going to have a music show, we have the sign dancers, we're going to have like storytelling. The storytelling is bilingual. It doesn't mean that only the storyteller will tell a story and an interpreter will translate it. No, they both know sign language, and they will build the story together to think about the rhyme, the poetry, how we say to make it like the more sensitive and the more poetic to all the audiences, hearing or deaf people. So these initiatives have helped to spread awareness of deaf culture, to strengthen its identity, and to enable deaf people to work in arts using their own language. So this is a group of small kids discussing contemporary art. So this is a festival of poetry, bilingual. These are some poetic experiences that we do. This is a young receiving the kids, the deaf kids, and these are some urban interventions that they did as a group of studies. So those kids of the film that you saw, they grow up and they wanted to keep studying contemporary art and discussing and thinking about interventions and performing that should bring awareness, bring the society awareness of deaf culture and the deaf realities. So this is one film that they made talking about a free communication in the buses of Sao Paulo, and there it goes. Those other kids doing a flash mob in the International Deaf Day that they wanted to spread the sentence like, our body is our language, so happy Deaf Day. And they were doing it all together. Those are music shows with sign dancers. And I was really admired how the deaf connect to the music. So I never thought about this before. And we have this educator that works in our staff, and he likes music, talks about music all the time. Sometimes he put just a headphone very loud so that he can feel the music. And I was thinking have ever anyone thought about that? So I started to research on the internet, and I found this party that we do once a year nowadays in MAM. That's Sensity, that the idea is to connect. So we build the party together with the deaf community, and the purpose is to feel the music, see the music, smell the music, and taste the music. So we can feel the music because we have this vibrating floor that's connected to the sound, so everyone can feel in their body. We have you can see the music, we have the sign dancers, we have the VJs. You can smell the music because we have this aroma jockey that's a DJ that makes the scents according to the emotion that the music brings. And we have this food sensation that's sensorial tastes and textures and etc. And this is a thing that we would never think about this if we didn't have connection with the deaf community. So I'm gonna put a video again. No sound. No, yeah, there is sound. Okay, can I put since the beginning? So this is Sensi to the Party. This is an example, how can we build things together with the community and show that the museum really belongs to them. So in Sao Paulo, it's not like everyone that knows where is the Museum of Modern Art. People the huge society are not used to go to the museums. So, but if you find a deaf person that can live very far from Sao Paulo, they know about MAM because of this party. That's a party that you can meet all your friends, all your communities, and have another experiences, another way to experience the music. So the first party that we did, like there was like, we made a video, a sign language video, just to invite everyone, and there was this community of blind deafs that came all over from Canada to Brazil to go to the party. So it was very special to see how something can really change the reality. So, and then like, talking about the blind people, we have this program that we call A Closer Look, that Balkar said, this photographer, this blind photographer, he said like, I'm not touching when I touch a sculpture or artwork, I'm looking closer, because my body, my eyes are all my body, so that's the way I look. So what we learn about with like people with visual disability or blinds, they taught us to see something that transcends the visual. On our courses, blind and sighted students alike investigated space, carried out exercises in sensory exploration, and described the images to one to another. So the imagination is enriched by the development of sensory perception, and creativity is fluid by description. In a contemporary world brimming over with images, blindness is an interesting condition that can help us to work on developing visual sensibility, and the purpose of creative process. So scripts, sensory activities, and audio guides are now part of MAM education. So this is a deaf-blind visitors visiting an exhibition of Ernesto Neto, that's a great artist from Brazil. Those are some photographies, some works that the blind students created and made together with the non-blind students. So a blind visitor visiting an exhibition before touching in this. And there's some artworks. So the educator is doing a description of the artwork, and there it goes. This is the mental health community. That's people that have some suffering of mental health. They made it clear that we needed to overcome our prejudice and work with the diversity in a more sensitivity and wide-ranging manner. They showed us the infinitive of possibilities for creative expression that open when we allow ourselves to stray from the mainstream. They also showed us, in their case, the issue is not accessibility, but acceptance of people with different viewpoints and sensibilities. So for people who suffer some mental health issue, we don't need to put a sign language interpreter or audio description or a nice architecture, but we need to work with people. Like, people must be sensitive and must be open-minded to people who relate differently. So the members of this community are now avid supporters of the museum, and they help us constantly to rethink the relationship between art and life. So those are like, I don't know how it is here in Russian, but in Brazil we have like this huge psychiatric hospitals that been like a big jail, like storage of people that the society didn't want it, like walking around. And we have some students, for instance, this José, he was 30 years locked in a hospital, living in a hospital. So he didn't get out. And the first time he got out was to go to the museum and to do a course. So nowadays the laws changed, so these psychiatric hospitals are not that allowed to exist anymore. So a lot of fights about the human rights and the rights of these people. But the situation is also changing because of the huge using of crack. they also use this as an excuse to lock a lot of people again and to do some treatments that are really violent treatments. So the museum has to open the space to receive these people and help them to think about other things and fight for their rights as well. So people with learning difficulties and other disability have taught us how all people attribute meaning to their experience and learn in different ways. This means that an educator who's not willing to truly enter into the world of a student is unlikely to achieve anything. It's impossible to teach without learning, and learning means being sensitive to other people's needs. This is true for all kinds of education, for sure. But however, when we see students with serious physical disabilities painting, drawing, and producing sculptures, or students who are both deaf and blind appreciating on a guided tour of a visual arts exhibition, we are made aware of breadth of possibilities available for learning and communication. So these are people with intellectual disabilities. And then getting back to the reflection of Bauker about like how are we deprived of our freedom, of our liberty, we can go back to the analysis of our lifestyle and our behavior and ask ourselves, what is actually the actual accessibility that we all enjoy? Which accessibility do we have to the city? And then I'm talking to Sao Paulo, that's a city with not so much public spaces, not where that you can go around and have fun for free, to the right to come and go, to our bodies, to our desires. And then we also started to work with a lot of youngs that we stay in the most visited park of Sao Paulo. So a lot of youngs come to hang out, and they were like drinking a lot and having some alcoholic comas and putting themselves on a risk situation. So we started to work with education and culture with them. And we find out that a lot of them was like, they were like or gay or lesbians or transgender or transsexual with a family that doesn't accept them. So they have like a real like bad inclusion in the family and the society. And we started so to work with some subjects like their rights, the LGBT culture, feminism, et cetera, that they can stand for themselves and know that each one can be like they are. And this is Giuseppe Campuzano, that's from the Travesti Museum from Peru, that he says, it is indispensable and urgent that we stop governing in the ludicrous idea that there are only two possible bodies, male and females, and two genders inextricably linked to them, man and woman. We make people and trans and intersex issues our priority because they are who, with their presence, their activism, and their theoretical production, mark the way to the paradigm shift that we allow, that in our world there are so many bodies, sexualities, so many identities as life wants, and all respected, desired, and celebrated. So this is another learning that we have with them, with our audiences. And then, okay, so I showed you a video from 15 years ago, and now I'm gonna show you how we are nowadays. Dima, can you put the video? de anos de trabalho, de convívio intenso com o público diverso, o museu aprendeu muito com isso. Então, o que era considerado um obstáculo, uma limitação, foi entendido como potencialidades, como possibilidades. Então, hoje a gente tem a alegria de dizer que a acessibilidade ela não é só promover acesso ao que existe, ao que está instituído, mas sim promover acesso ao que você deseja que exista.
O peso da gratidão. Então, quando a gente olha, lembra um móvel, tanto da cama quanto da cabeceira, de uma madeira pesada, maciça, mas na verdade é um trabalho frágil.
E é um público que sempre traz uma linguagem muito particular e recria o domínio artístico e criativo da gente. Então isso é fundamentalmente uma força motriz do espaço criador, não só do museu como arte, mas do espaço criador como museu educador em si.
Quando recebe um grupo ouvinte, eu sou como educador surdo e uso Libras, mas o grupo ouvinte sabe Libras, nunca teve contato com surdo. Ele olha para mim, nossa, como para me comunicar. Ele começa a preocupar, mas eu não vou ouvir ele falar, mas ele fala ou não. Mas vem da coisa da cabeça das crianças.
Não é que você vai conceber uma ação, uma exposição, um curso, uma oficina e depois acessibilizar. Não, você vai pensar nela de forma acessível e aí você vai descobrir nessa acessibilidade um monte de possibilidades, possibilidades poéticas, expressivas, que ficam mais interessantes para todos.
Pensar nos diferentes públicos, quer dizer, pensar no surdo, pensar na pessoa que tem a deficiência visual, pensar na pessoa que tem uma deficiência motora, quer dizer, qual vai ser o acesso. Então, assim, eu acho que está cada vez mais incorporado em toda a equipe do museu, que é isso, quer dizer, na sociedade existem pessoas com diferentes tipos de limitação e todas elas vêm ao museu. E, aliás, eles querem que elas venham ao museu. Aqui tem 4 dedos, daqui e aqui.
He's a blind
Agora,
teacher.
Agora, mesmo põe para o lado e põe na base do nariz.
He teaches sculptures for the blind and from the
Como é que eu
not
consigo
blind
mapear
student.
a superfície da peça que eu estou fazendo se não usar os meus dedos e as minhas mãos como unidade de medida para poder dividir essa peça em vários pedaços e poder mapear e saber aonde trabalhar nela?
Os educadores, por exemplo, eles têm que ter um corpo aberto, um corpo sensível, um corpo preparado para lidar com essa diversidade que se apresenta e essa potência dessa diversidade. Elas são todas atuando numa construção permanente de uma sociedade plural, em que todos pertencem.
A Roberta já lembrou de Dança do Ventre. É verdade.
O corpo de educadores começa a se apropriar desses novos espaços de linguagem e começa, então, a poder se comunicar naturalmente em outras linguagens. Então, não é mais a linguagem do outro, é também a minha linguagem. Então, a coisa não fica na distância, fica na proximidade, qual nós todos temos novos lugares de fala.
Vamos fazer barulho! Se liga aí, sociedade. Não é minha convocação. Brincadeira de bomba, cachorro dragão. Se distrair. Agradecer a todos meus amigos presentes. A cultura tem esse poder de transformar e de incluir as diferenças.
As pessoas sabem que uma preocupa com todas as pessoas que foram no museu. Para receber.
E onde as pessoas veem com essas diferentes limitações, independentemente da limitação dela, ela vai produzir alguma coisa, ela vai se aproximar da arte através da prática. Então isso é uma coisa muito diferente. Tá rosto no rosto aqui, dá uma riscada aqui, dá uma riscada e junta mesmo.
So this last sentence means it's a strong sentence about all the fights for the rights of the people with disability. That means nothing about us without us. Nada sobre nós sem nós. Nothing without us. Without us, so that's why people, like, we have these deaf educators in our staff, we have this blind teacher, we have people that were homeless that today works in our staff. So people, like, we don't see the accessibility just as visitors, but also as staff members, and also as artists, as people that are producing arts. So this is why what we think about accessibility nowadays, that accessibility for us is not only to promote access to what already exists, but also to think and build a desirable reality to live. So this is what I wanted to show you. And thanks a lot for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm here to, I would be excited.
Thank you, Diana. We're going to have a Q&A session now, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
People going to talk in Russian, so we need...
Okay, yes. And I have also these folders that I brought to you, so maybe you can take one and pass.
У нас сейчас есть возможность задать ваши вопросы, если есть. Вот я с микрофоном, вы можете задать их публично, если есть идеи. У Даяны будет микрофон и перевод. Подумайте пару минут. Если вы стесняетесь и вопросов нет, вы можете подойти сейчас и пообщаться после. Есть вопросы? Задайте вслух. Давайте.
Говорите на русском поближе. Я могу и на английском. Well, are you going to transfer your technology of connecting to deaf people to the other countries? Вопрос такой, в общем, собирается ли Даян перемещать технологию?
Are you going to transfer your technology of interacting with the deaf people to other countries?
Yes, we love to do that. So, for instance, this party, Sensity, it's a party I found out, like, in the Netherlands, in Holland, that they are the Skyway Foundation that developed this party. So we did an exchange with the Guggenheim. We did we do an exchange with a lot of Latin America countries, and that's why I'm here also, to share this experience. So we found out, like, even in Brazil, how a lot of people that work in museums wants to learn a bit, to share experience. Of course, we share our experience, but of course, each institution will develop their cultural program, accessible cultural program, together with their culture and their beliefs and everything. So yes, we are, like, very, very excited to share our knowledge, and we just need to be invited for this. Yes.
Еще вопросы? Okay, there is no open question, maybe after that, okay. Хорошо, спасибо большое, что пришли.
Thank you so much for coming. A round of applause for Diana. Please come up to Diana, and if you would prefer a more private chat, you're welcome to do so.